Hello, my loyal viewers. That sounded really weird. This whole thing is really weird, and it's funny to have viewers on this channel because, like I've said before, I was doing it just to have like a super convenient place to document evidence, especially while I was going through my therapeutics and have that portion of my life to do. It was just really great to organize everything as it was coming up. And like anybody with really gnarly trauma does, it is good to put it in a box and put it somewhere because it can't just be at the forefront of your life all the time. I'm going to do a mic check. And so I was really glad that I did that because now I feel like all I have to do is get to a stable place where I can finally bring these people to court. Super evil people. They've hurt dozens of others. I would even say it could have affected thousands of people because these were practices my family did generationally, but that'll be for the future, and all I can do is my part. Hi, Wasp. I just landed in my Airbnb. If you could exit, because I'd hate for you to get trapped in here, darling. Thank you. He looked at me and flew away. I'm glad he didn't look at me and fly in my face. He was just like, huh? So that's good. I mainly have a lot of luck with wild animals or things that would otherwise hurt you, like certain insects. But I know that someday they're going to sting me or bite me. So not today. He just said, okay, thank you for letting me escape. So, or whatever in WASP language, I don't know. So it was nice because I had all those subscribers come on at a time where I had just been attacked at school. So update, I'm just going to finish at another university I was already accepted into. And this way they accepted more of my prior credits. So it's kind of nice, except for that I really liked some of the classes I was in and I didn't get to finish them. And one of them was public speaking. So I really liked the practice of, he had us do some YouTube videos of like addressing an audience and trying to get to know your audience, because that's definitely my biggest struggle, especially because I don't interact with people like I used to. And I look forward to being able to do that again in a setting that's safe. And and where I'm not always being corralled back to where they wanted me. So it's good for that because it's like a funny part of your humanity you don't realize you're losing when you're being isolated or isolating yourself. And then obviously I was living in a really violent place. So where it was appropriate to isolate myself. Anyway, so I just wanted to do an update that I'm feeling optimistic. I'm feeling better, really happy to be out of there. Still dealing with like a lot of sadness, but I'm like letting myself like let that slowly filter in because I have to disassociate because it's just like unreal. And I don't get help. Like I said, I'm freeing myself still. And then I finally have the takeflightsurvivors.org and their survivor who does counseling. And then rescueamerica.ngo that has like a bit of guidance too. And so that's awesome. Veteran for Child Rescue still hasn't wanted to answer. So, and I will do that in court because you guys have to answer. And if you have any other former Navy SEALs that have done what you did to me, Tony Feaster, or somebody else, something totally inappropriate, also related to trafficking and safety, I can't imagine actually some of the cases where people would have, former Navy SEALs would have actually, in their perversions, kidnapped sex trafficking survivors. So I'm sure we'll hear that, not necessarily from Veterans for Child Rescue, but you guys have a mental illness because that was your job, was to be a little bit psychopathic. And then you're going into something that there isn't even a psychology invented yet for, and that's for people who've survived sexual torture. So it's funny that the people who like had to survive a torture think it's their place to rescue people from a sexual torture. And I can imagine that there have been some real mistakes still ongoing. So anyway, so for my specific thing with them, I'm going to still do that. And I'm just going to accept that none of those people are going to answer any of my calls or emails, no matter what I have like my conversation with that former Navy SEAL on the email saying they're giving me resources and they're here to help me and be there for me whenever I need them. And then just a bunch of fucking bullshit and will intent to source information and cause harm regardless of their need to gather whatever. I don't even want to go to that, whatever the crime is. But basically, like, using me for information was a crime. And then I was re-trafficked immediately after that, promise of safety and security. So they're going to answer for that. I have a hard time with that, probably most of all, because while rescueamerica.ngo and then takeflightsurvivors.org with Sula, while they're, yes, like an authority, they're all like survivor networks and were founded on survivors. They're not an outside authority. And so like for the one thing that I was hoping would be that outside authority, it's not there. And then whatever they're doing, it's great because I'm sure they're doing for like more heinous scenarios, but also I fear like I just kind of fear because I do all my own audits because I'm an adult American woman. And so when I audit that reality later and how it affected the people and like the most innocent, it'll be interesting because it's been 6 years now since most of the GWAT and alike veterans set up their trafficking survivor organizations. And I don't know if they've changed a single law to match the gravity they all admit they can't handle. So anyway, I don't want to ruin my podcast with talking about them. And it ruins other podcasts that I was enjoying because they helped make social things make sense to me just in the way that they communicated. Just like it ruins other veterans for me. And I know that's a prejudice that I hold. But I don't want to let it ruin that. And it's like, it's a very specific group of people's job that took on the trafficking thing. And then somehow it made like the reporters' jobs, or maybe those sharing that information. I don't know. See, I don't even want to think about it anymore. This is why I decided I was just going to say what I was going to do and move on. So that's what I'm going to do. Just getting like healthier, trying not to, I'm like a sugar addict. It's really bad. So, and then just have been like using food as a crutch. So trying to just like respect and heal my body more. Like when I was doing tons of yoga and meditation and just really enjoying like being in my body. And then also like acknowledging that me not being healthier is just like another thing my captors or the people who enjoyed watching me suffer got off on. And so thinking that way, and it's been nice. And I love healthy food and exercise. And so that's my self update on that part, because I realized all those subscribers came in, all of you precious 7 came in as I was like, hey, I'm escaping this violence, and this is also what's going on. Those are the other videos. I want to talk about the news, because that's what I enjoy doing. It's like history and news. And so I want to make sure I'm giving an update on myself, because I keep getting a little pessimistic in the feeling safe and just like a part of like the normal life everybody else gets to live. And so I was getting pessimistic on that. So I thought, no, I don't want it to be like the forefront of every conversation I have, but so I think it's good to practice doing what I enjoy, and then and then just give smaller updates, and then let myself move on, because that's a huge struggle for me right now, is just building up a new life with people and friends and work eventually. So that's the biggest challenge. So I want to practice on the YouTubes here. And with my 7 subscribers, I thank you, because I'm like, oh, these seemingly good people might care how I'm doing. I should, and I can admit that that's actually good practice to force myself to do. So okay, so on to the news. I'm gonna grab a tissue. Okay. It was really interesting to learn that, so I think it's today, or it's today, tomorrow. So Russia has a victory day that is their victory over the Nazis. How weird that that day wouldn't just always be celebrated in America too. Like, because we love World War II, you think we'd be like, another World War II acknowledgement of defeating the Nazis, May 9th or May 8th. What? Of course. I didn't post any of the links below, so I'm just going to tell you what I was reading, or where I'm reading from. Okay. And I think the American press and others had reported, this is Fox News, and it's on Russia Victory Day, and then them accusing neo-Nazis of being alive and active in Ukraine. When the consequence of Russia coming into Ukraine happened, because he did say he was going to do it the year before if certain things had happened. So it wasn't like a surprise invasion. It was like, I told ABC News last year, the American people need to get it together. You guys, I told too many people surprised. Too many people not doing their own research. That's what Pootie was thinking as he was on ABC. He goes, I know all these things will happen, Mr. ABC newscaster. No, sorry, it's 2019, I think he had said. Anyway, it's a really great clip from ABC News 2019, Vladimir Putin interview. I forget who the interviewer is. Brown hair guy. Super predictive and like fascinating. But our news and then other news had reported that there were some like actual like Nazi party Ukrainian European men who were like called to fight. So should we see what Fox News says about it? Okay. Okay, so it's tomorrow over there. It's Tuesday. It's on the 9th. I don't know. Sorry, I can't fathom that time frame right now. Or ever, really. Time frames really throw me off. Okay, so this is a former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, saying, quote, "Unfortunately, today's Europe and its squalid leaders have a very short memory, but we will always remember the heroes of the Second World War. Our country eradicated fascism in 1945," Medvedev wrote. "Having no doubt in present-day Europe we will crush the hideous Bandera neo-Nazism cherished so dearly by the heirs of the Third Reich in the EU." Drama. So during the coronation yesterday, I recommend 35 minutes in on NBC's news clip, like 30 minutes in, and then he speaks for a short while. The priest or who's ever, speaking on behalf of God and the Bible is is actually talking to like the audience in particular at one point, and he says something, or no, he's talking about leadership, and so he's saying, Jesus served, and his gown, his regalia was torn claws. He wore wounds in his hands, and he had a crown of thorns, and he was making the point to the audience about a real leader would never be concerned with maintaining status because you're so filled with the service of your people that there wouldn't be room for that notion alongside the service for your people. And so that he says status and looks over at like the crowd of everybody dressed, in all their shit that costs a lot of money. Some of it deserving, some of it, for the status. And that's part of history that has good parts to it, fraudulent parts to it. But so it was interesting that he made a point to say, like, you guys, the status thing, and kind of explaining like what that in like a very traditional way, what like the kingship meant, or when what it means, and then how people have a tendency to try to see it another way. I'm going to watch that speech again. I loved it. I didn't really watch the whole coronation because that's America's island, and it really should become more of America's island, especially because one of their prominent princes raped and tortured children on an island for decades with Jeffrey Epstein. And so I think it must become America's island in the near future here, in a major check and balance Geneva Convention approved way. So heads up, Charles. Just kidding. I would never ask your permission for anything. At all. I appreciate England, and it is just crazy that nobody's holding that man accountable. Okay, but well, back to Medvedev. I'm going to read that again. Unfortunately, today's Europe and its squalid leaders, truly squalid, have a very short memory, or some of them just invented themselves in World War II. But we will always remember the heroes of the Second World War. Our country eradicated fascism in 1945. Have no doubt in present-day Europe, we will crush the hideous. I don't know what Bandera is. Maybe it's like the Latin socialist bullshit that they're all involved in. Neo-Nazism, cherished so dearly. This is my favorite part. Cherished so dearly by the heirs of the Third Reich in the EU. Yes. So I really do think that I'm going to leave that up. We'll talk about it for a minute. On a serious note, and I had just had this t-shirt made, and I'm really excited to get back to that because that's going to be a victory for me for my most recent assaults from Fond du Lac, a school that actually promotes genocide. And just again, like, I'm part Aztec, and no, bitch, my grandma came up here and my grandpa way before you migrated from the East Coast. And I'm not sorry, and you're welcome for helping you with your own history. So I had just gotten into this t-shirt making while I was finishing up there a few weeks ago. And I had one shirt that said Operation Paperclip 1944 to 2004. We should probably have a new hearing. And just a real quick, so Operation Paperclip was a bunch of the dum-dums in 1940s America, like all their kids just became retarded. And this is real. And I literally mean like the constraints on American society it was supposed to be free and whatever, like nobody was thinking much. So even though there had been a ton of inventors in American history, by the 1940s, it was like a fear, and then a follow order. So like, oh no, somebody was already doing this. Like you may not, or like you're a woman and like our American society is so fragile. Like you may not, even though women had done it before, like, and then Hedy Lamarr is a really good example from World War II, helped invent Bluetooth, a major technology, and just a real weird scenario in that history with the Navy. So people weren't like inventing, like America wasn't like progressing like it had been, like in medicine and all this. You can't just test on live Americans. It's going to obviously get out in the papers if you test pharmacy or surgery on any group of people, really. What am I trying to say here? Okay, so and so in Europe, because again, we're just 280 years old. We're not a very old country, and the fall of the aristocracy came with the birth of America. So just like, bam, like, but then people still had, what they had left. were fucking over who they could fuck over. They were looking to build where they could, as far as like the aristocracy in Europe. But one of the super popular ways was defrauding Americans and using their freedom against them, and just trying to, okay, we can't do this here, we'll do it over here. So anyway, something that people like, and the Nazis were famous for it. That's common knowledge, to experiment on people, and they were looking to invent a number of things. I think in 1930, MDMA was invented, LSD around the same time. So these are pharmaceutical things that are being invented, and then they're having active live population tests, experiments. That's the word. And so anyway, Operation Paperclip is just, it's the scientists that happen to be in Europe. And then when the Nazis took control, they got all the scientists, because also that would be something you don't want your competitor to have. And not knowing what you could possibly invent in a time frame, it pushed everybody in a corner to where it was like, oh, should we wait and see kind of how we might need to respond, because we have like nuclear, and then we have all of these bioweapons that had just been invented. Nerve gas was World War I. So people just started operating with bio and chemical warfare in this massive way. Other empires, of course, had that, but in this massive way with all the firepower too. So that's like, so you can understand kind of at the time you would want to fucking wait and see what happens if you didn't know. And a lot of people in America in leadership didn't know, just like today when Mark Zuckerberg was in front of the Senate a few years ago explaining the internet for a hearing on social media regulation, explaining the function of the internet. So it's similar, people in leadership back, people who don't want to do it, right? If nobody wants to do the job, well, somebody who's doing it for like the attention part or feeling important, who's not actually qualified, somebody who really is trying their best but just can't, does the job. And so Operation Paperclip was just all the scientists who had been seen like they could be of use in America, because we didn't have something comparable or able to compete, or the people who could compete were not desirable because of their race, because it is Jim Crow era and the Democratic Party, KKK, with some Republicans era in 1944. But anyway, so we need a hearing on that. And then at large, my comment was to relate to what this former president said about the heirs of the Third Reich in the European Union. We need a new Nuremberg trial. Have to have it. Why not? That was only 78 years ago. Why not redo it and just be like, okay, what happened? And all the children in America are scared the shit about the Nazis, and we don't have good answers. And Operation Paperclip did happen. So we do know that it is common knowledge now that a bunch of the Nazis came over here. And that's, whatever. And again, it doesn't mean that all of them were active, like in that faith. And that was the argument, which is why we need another Nuremberg trial. Because I do want to know what their grandchildren are up to, especially because we don't keep tabs, or we haven't as Americans, on what happened to Mr. Edward, that would have been Harry's great uncle, Harry, William, and Kate and Meghan, their great uncle. I don't know why I feel like I have to address them all. But we don't keep track of that guy. And he was famous for coming here in the 30s, right before they started gassing the Jews, actually. 1937 was the coronation. Forget about the details right now. But it was the 1930s where he came to marry a divorced waitress out of Arkansas or wherever Miss Wallace Simpson was from. But we just never circled back to that. And he had ties with Hitler because it had been a social club that became very popular before there was any genocide, anything. It had a good 5 years of Hitler in power, just like party time. And that's when like Harry Ford, 1936, he had donated some money to the Nazi campaign. A lot of people did. And by the way, they did Volkswagen. So if you're driving a Volkswagen, you're closer to it than any Ford car owner is. Yeah. So, but less on the Ford part. And so who cares if the Ford part too? But what the fuck happened to that guy who was going to be the King of England in the 1930s, came to America? No, I do want to know what his grandkids are into, actually. Thank you. Like which? Like, it's not okay to not have an answer. And then you have a country at war right now who did help defeat the Nazis and who's actively sane. And not that I agree with the left, but they were quite concerned about Nazis. Okay, sure. Because we should have a hearing on it. Please be specific and then be serious about what would be the most dangerous part. And that's all the unchecked people from Operation Paperclip, but mainly the social class, because they're always to blame and they aren't for the most grotesque things, because their only thing is like status, like the priest from Charles's coronation and Mendeleev are saying here. This is the heirs of, well, the priest wasn't saying it. I'm saying it. But the priest was saying something along the lines of squalid leadership in Europe with short memories. Yeah, I think that's a great point to argue on too, which I'll bring up. Another reason I'm doing these videos to practice my arguments I intend to bring forward. Let's all the heirs of the Third Reich in the EU put your hands up and let's have another Nuremberg trial. For the socialists, and again, the Nazi Party was a socialist party. I forget that myself, that's what it like translates to, is to something socialist party. So happy Victory Day to all you Russian descendants of World War II who also defeated the Nazis. You guys should all finish your jobs because apparently you didn't. Okay, let me do a bit about lighting here. Let me just bring it closer to myself. So I'm in, I'm not going to say where I am. That was something I learned last time. It's like, you shouldn't do that. Until I'm at another Airbnb though. It's a cool little Airbnb. Is this lighting better? Will this lighting do? I'm obviously judging it by, can I stand to watch myself talk right now? Yeah, I'm just gonna let that do. Okay, because I don't have that much more I wanted to talk about. I wish we were doing debates, and it would have been so interesting if we could have had debate in college. It was denied. Literally, like every class I would ask to do it in on any given topic related to that class. Because this is like World War III right now, and it's fucking fascinating. It's so fascinating. We should be like right away opening that World War II debate, because this is another country saying the heirs of Nazis are just acting squalid in the UK. And hey, Americans who might be called or sent to do this fight, can you give a shit about the World War II that made you feel like such a proud little child when you were growing up? Can you kind of care about them being like, oh shit, did I miss something? Ugh. 'Cause yeah, it'd be such an interesting debate right now. And I wonder what it'll look like to where I'm moving if we can actually debate in class, because I'll be doing all history and then finishing with a history degree and math minor. And so I wonder if in the history classes we'll actually be able to do that. Probably not. Maybe though, maybe. Okay. Let me finish up the article. Like, I don't know what Fox is trying to say. I hardly do, because it's propaganda mainly. Russia's trying to disallege this history. And this is something that's commonly done. They're like, oh no, how could he be a Nazi? He was Jewish. A lot of Nazis were Jewish. There is always, whenever there's a conflict between two groups, there's always an inner conflict in between that one group where they become enemies of each other. Always. That's never not happened. So in no realm of reality did being Jewish make you innocent if you were in World War II. But boy, did the papers and a lot of the Nazis who escaped to America utilize that to escape social persecution and really just to never have to also accept other things that they may have allowed or been a part of. But yeah, so Fox is trying to say, oh, how could they be a part of a Nazi regime? Their president was Jewish. Absolute garbage. Okay. I'm pretty sure George Soros is or was Jewish. I also have Jewish ancestry. And German. And Russian. And Eastern European. And other things. But okay. Oh, they're trying to equate lives lost to evil done. Okay. They're not arguing a counterpoint to what Mendedev said, really, with too much. Oh, apparently he's on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, but that's interesting. Yeah, I don't understand like Russia's role really in like the past few centuries, or like ancient very much. I understand that better than I understand the modern part. And I'm signed up for a history of Russian class right now, but I don't really think that's going to get into like what I'm looking to learn. So I'll probably drop that because it's Russia under the czars. And I'm like, I feel like that's secondary. Yeah, I would want to, if anything, I would want to talk about like Russia with like tribal affiliations and like the specific border of like Kyrgyzstan, and then like trade routes and like that more. I don't know if I want to do Russia under the czars. I don't know. Eventually, yeah. But for this semester, no. Because he adds in the tweet, Mr. Medvedev, a former president of Russia. I'm reminding the citizens of the country which are now fighting against Russia. A good thing Elon Musk took over Twitter. This is all on Twitter. Over 1 million Soviet soldiers sacrificed their lives for peace and freedom from fascism in Europe, he wrote in a tweet, adding 600,000 citizens of the USSR died liberating Poland from fascism. 380,000 gave their lives liberating Czechia and Hungary, and over 100,000 in Germany. Because yeah, it's weird how the news right now in the war with Russia and Ukraine is doing like personal attacks, saying like, oh, the Russians, Putin's so evil, Putin's so evil. It's weird that you can't both say the truth. Like Russia helped defeat the Nazis and the fascism of World War I and World War II. World War I. Sorry, I don't know what Russia's role was. I never got it right. But they don't say that. And then they said, and then now today, it's like they won't qualify the origin, which then I'm like, okay, well then it's total propaganda. You can't even qualify the origin. Okay, so that was the end of that article. They just ended at most of that article on Fox was actually just Medvedev's tweets. And so they're just saying like, I think the editor was trying to walk that line. Like, so so I think they evacuated that that plant, the Zaporizhzhia plant I mentioned in the other video. Fox News is saying that they did evacuate the plant. It looks like Russia holds the plant because they did the evacuation. And that's the region's largest nuclear plant. So that's some winning. You won the war, because then now they would have to then get coal. And then there's no way the Americans will allow weapons, but there's no way, unless somebody disagrees with me, there's no way they're going to allow Americans to send gas and coal to Ukraine for energy purposes. Maybe they will. This next election is going to be weird. Okay. And hey, maybe there's some technology we don't know of that, I don't know. The sigh is stagnation. That's okay. My thing is dying. I guess I'm going to go get food. The last article, or I guess headline. Let me see if I kept it up. So Joe Biden and the railway industry, I guess, had a little spat. I'm just going to go through it. You should be able to Google Joe Biden, railway, India, Middle East. So he's talking to the railway union, 8 of 12. So I guess there's 12 railway unions. That's something I want to do in my history class. By the way, tell me about your unions of raw resources, America. Well, that one's transportation, but I want to know like the raw resources and transportation ones. It's fast. It's interesting. I'm not being accusatory right now. I'm going to be accusatory later when it's appropriate, as far as for industries, unions having totally trespassed on self-determination and independent liberties. And that'll be later. And the fault will lie. This is the kind of judge I am, as I've made myself, in my high-minded spirit, in how I would like when seriously thinking about it, how I always do these things, because I don't know. I guess maybe it's something that like provided me a lot of comfort through what I had to survive, but because I would think like, well, what would be the most just thing to do? And so I always trace back to the origin and then see how those trespasses interchanged up until the modern or the present crime. And so as far as like things that intentionally were meant to maintain power and control for a certain group of people and deny other people self-determination and liberty, I'll start with the origin and then tell a story. It's going to be a part of my history degree here that I will share in a way that's very much like this with an audience. No, I mean it all in really good faith. And we're a really young country, and there was a lot of innovation these past 280 years. And I've come to that place with my union thing. Because when I was first realizing, like, holy shit, we are self-determination, like not a thing. Like if you wanted to just go have a city with like, go build a city and you had the means and the community to do so, and with all your freedoms and liberties, like you would not be allowed to. But I understand because we're very new and a lot's happened and so much technology has become a part of our economy and our lives. And so I look to do that later. But anyway, so 8 out of the 12 railway unions were mad at Joe Biden because so it was weird. I didn't know this was done on a federal level. So also I want to understand the unions because they don't make sense, like the raw resource ones. So we have 5 iron ore ones. Just learned we have 12 railway unions. That is not enough. We should have way more railway. That's fucking atrocious. So is having just 5 iron ore unions. It's atrocious. But so for some reason the railway, like bargaining a contract for paid sick and paid leave, they wanted 7 days sick and paid leave, but they had gotten like a percentage raise of like 20%, but they didn't get their sick and pay leave. So, but then I was like, what does that have to do with the federal government? And definitely your state and your city should oversee the fucking railway, something that would determine life or death in northern cities. And you could argue that for southern cities too, but certainly for the north. What? Also, we need to grow. Don't you want to grow? So this is one thing the guy was complaining about that did teach me a lot about the railway union. So I forget his name, a railway worker, who's saying like, because what Joe Biden did with the federal level at the same time, this was going on with domestic American railway unions, was he, and this was also right to do, was he set up some plan for American railway between the Middle East and India. Yes. Very good. So, yeah. And I'm glad he did that, because that's for where we're at right now geopolitically. That just makes sense to get up in there in a real quick way with the trade routes between India and the Middle East. Yeah, you have to compete for Africa. It's not going to be an option not to. And it's weird. Well, and that is racist. American politics ever thinking it was worth less to try to work with Africa. And maybe there's a lot of evidence historically in those times in American history where people chose Latin America, where maybe Africa had cheaper labor and more abundant resources of the same minerals or raw materials. Anyways, I'm really glad, because that means that we'll be invested in growing and competing over there, because it's not an option not to. And so there can be light rails. According to this article, and I want to say it might have been WDIO or another. I'm sorry, viewer, that I let you down. I don't remember where that article came from. But so the domestic railway worker was saying they're going to get a light rail. Why don't we have light rails? It's like, yes, mister. There you go. That's a question you need to ask the history of your field, railway work. And go forth there, because I'm sure there's an answer to why have we not wanted. It has to be a matter of want, if we have the means to do it, a light railway or more of them here in America. And that's probably has to do with other railway unions. Do all the unions get together? Does like one rep from iron ore meet once a year in a circle of fire with one rep from the railway and the teachers union? And then do they all play that Aztec game where you have somebody you sacrifice and you made their head a ball, and then you kick it around for sport? And then also likely they would add in some Russian roulette with a little pistola. Is that how you guys bargain? How do you all figure things out together? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's my question, and why I'm really excited to finish up with my history degree here. Because it doesn't make sense that, and the railway worker went on. He went on to say, we get an update in technology, and then we get promised that we'll get it within 5 years. And by the time that 5th year comes up, it's outdated. There's immediately a better tech out. And then we're just in this cycle. And he was like, where is our fucking light rail? So that article is super interesting. And so I have James J. Hill actually on my phone right now. Oh, I should have clicked on it. So he was my favorite railway magnate, one of my favorite Americans. His quote that I really love is, give me give me snuff, whiskey, and Swedes, and I'll build a railway to hell. And then his other quote is, the businessman or the entrepreneur needs to be wary of the predatory poor and also the predatory rich, but above all, the predatory politician. And so during his time, the railway, like the unions, learned they could weaponize themselves, and that's something they did a lot. So, yeah. And so, I just feel like we need so much more railway. I also really love the Patriot from Duluth, Mr. Cook, who I think funded railways. He has a park in the area. He wanted to build one from Duluth to Portland, Duluth to Chicago. Still relevant today, that would make all the areas boom. People for enjoyment, for leisure would love to do that, to just be able to Duluth to Portland, to take that rail out west. That should absolutely be a light rail. I wonder how fast you could get to Portland. How on a light rail? What do they like? How fast does a light rail travel? Okay, so this one says 70 miles, 75 miles per hour. What's the one that's like enclosed that Japan has? Bullet train. I don't even think they're called bullet trains. So, Mr. Railway Guy, we need bullet trains. It's weird. America, out of all places, doesn't have a goddamn east to west bullet train or Midwest to either direction. I think it should all start in the center. Okay, those go 320 miles per hour. So you get there, yeah, in like 3 hours. That'd be awesome. So we do need to expand our trains, and that'll also be like that's a defensive measure. World War II, I guess, also didn't teach any of the American men alive to do that. A lot of missed lessons from World War II in the modern era, in what in pharmacy and transportation. But I hope that we definitely just expand our railway like crazy. That would just be so beneficial, and it's such a good it's just such a good stabilizing factor. And then I would just really enjoy it, and I think it'd be good for youth too, because just imagine that freedom if you live in a really isolated place like in the Midwest, and you actually have a railway system where you could go and in a few hours or in like a day be in a totally different part of your country. And not having very much money, you could get out for the day, check it out, and then go back and have at least like expanded your horizons. So it'd be really good for youth to have that option, especially in the Midwest and isolated regions. And I guess the railway guy wouldn't understand why right now we need to build railway from India to the Middle East. And that's okay, because we do need more railway here, and those issues can stay separate. I don't know why the federal government had anything to do with that railway bargain to start with. I guess I'll learn that in my history classes, and especially because the railways were like, what a history with our fucking railways. And I don't really understand what happened there. That was it. Oh, no. So I've had a love-hate relationship with Meghan Markel. Because of whatever. And just as a person in her position who was trying to do something, but then I felt like wasn't using her skill. And then I felt like she might have been prejudiced or genocidal because she had been like with the socialists. So love-hate relationship. But then I just genuinely didn't actually like look into her that much because I wasn't into it at the time. But I did another video because I watched her Netflix special, which was interesting. But the part I liked was like her attitude with the Queen. And like in her Netflix special, she talked about the day after she officially married Harry, and that she went to meet with Elizabeth, and I think maybe before she talked about like having to bow to her, and so like her attitude with that, I was really interested to see how she would react with the coronation, and I loved it because she just went out on a hike, and like I had said in another video, like, no, your attitude if you go should be that you're better than all of them, as is like your American birthright. You should always feel like you are more correct in any scenario while you're there. But she didn't go, and she just went on a hike, and I loved that. And I liked that kind of example for somebody who could, maybe get really high off of, and I don't really get this because of how my brain works, and don't have like a normal social anything. And so, like how people get high off of like maybe having something over people, whether it be like knowledge or money or any other kind of power. So I don't know if those people there are like that. The priest at the coronation was like, you guys, your status is nothing compared to Jesus. And he was bleeding in his hands, wearing a trashy robe. And so your status is meaningless. So because the priest said it, I'll take at least that part of Meghan Markle's story to be true, that it was very much like these are like the wolves, but this is like what they're eating is like how visually or physically uncomfortable you are. And again, Meghan, like Mendedev just said, those are the heirs of the Third Reich of the European Union that I'm sure you've maybe seen around and not known it. But so certainly it's just your utmost American duty, like all of the great American ancestors of yours, to just know the truth. And I'm speaking to her having a lot of teachers in her family on her African side, I'm pretty sure. To just know the truth and to not because she had said she like felt suicidal while she was living there. That was a quote from the documentary, and I was like, no, they should actually fear you. They should be like, oh my God, she's a fourth generation English teacher from Los Angeles, California, USA. She's gonna notice that we're complete frauds, which a lot of them are. So anyway, I love that she didn't go. And I love that she went on a hike. I just I'm going to do pop culture news in my news coverage because it relaxes me. And I really hate women. Sorry. I don't trust them. It's more so than men, and the men should be who I trust less, but my Stockholm syndrome doesn't work that way. And so I like being able to respect things about women I don't really like. And Meghan Markle's a really good person to find things to respect about herself as a woman, even though I don't like her as a person. One American woman at that, because I definitely see her that way. I don't see her as like the whatever of Sussex. It's like a downgrade from the American you already were. It's just my opinion. I don't. However anybody else sees it. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted to talk about today. Okay. I feel like I should do a better close. Oh, I was going to do a bit of a prediction. So thank you, Dan Crenshaw. He was just on again about, I will get better at posting below because I want to be able to come back and go through these videos. This is good enough for now. So Dan Crenshaw did, and I remember like everything he does. So, so that clip will be searchable. Back on the Fox News talking about if we need to threaten Mexico with a bomb so they stop raping children in mass and sending them across the border for cash profits to fund an enterprise that has admitted to wanting to commit genocide and overthrow our country, well, I guess we'll just have to threaten a bomb, not do it. So I'm paraphrasing, but really he was just like, I mean, we're not going to bomb them, but I mean, what's the point in having these discussions about doing anything and then not being serious? And so he actually said, yeah, I think we should threaten a bomb. So I liked, he said something like that. Oh, I'd hate to misquote Dan because he's my favorite congressman. It's so sad. He's my absolute favorite. It's so sad. But I'm glad he went there because that's very good. It's time for warfare with Mexico. It's overdue. It's absolutely rotted away so many cities and people's lives, and these cartels are absolutely embedded in our country. I've been affected by them. My family has generationally for like 100 years, more than that, but like 100. I'll find out more when I go visit Merida. It's named after my grandma, great grandma. Yeah, and then it's a really good opportunity for the Mexican military because, of course, what happens is like, thank you, 33 Vato, for joining me, like faction on top of faction on top of faction. I can't imagine what the actual city statehood of Mexico looks like, but I know that it's absolutely worldwide and that they have connections everywhere. It's a massive enterprise. And like Dan says all the time, he's like, I want to work with the president. I want to work with the Mexican police. I want to work with people who want to come forward and go against these cartels because they're not headed in any direction of function. They're just completely degenerate children, and some of them are 40-year-old children. And it's such a beautiful place to be in because there's just so many opportunities to have diplomacy with America on Mexico that we couldn't have had before because there weren't like better men in place like Dan, who's graduated in Colombia, is fluent in Spanish, and grew up very much aware of that dichotomy. And even how he's treated now when Dan was like, when Cuba was shutting down, this was right at the election of Joe Biden, and they didn't have like electricity, or people couldn't use their phones to call their family in the States. Dan Crenshaw went down there, and it was interesting to see how even like the right was treating Dan on very like Hispanic issues. But the cool thing was seeing Dan, who's very Hispanic. So he's a 6th generation Texan, graduated high school in Colombia, and then American veteran, like just classic. But then he also has like something that's really important, I think, to a lot of Mexicans, including myself, for that part of my ancestry. And that's having this centuries old history for something that's very relevant today. And it's such a good tool to have somebody who can understand Mexico and like Latin America like Dan does. And I hope that the Mexican military does work more with him. And then in the direction, was it Ecuador just got that huge prison, and they're like, yeah, we're not doing this garbage anymore. We're not just cartel states and cocaine and meth states. We're going to be real countries. And so it's cool to see Guatemala and I think Ecuador making those steps. Okay, so right now the Sinaloa cartel is the lesser of the two evils compared to Jalisco. Yeah, I mean, really just anybody who's done this stuff with kids, they all have to go meet the Mother Mary, is as far as I'm concerned. But I believe you. Dan talks about those two cartels the most. I don't know that much about either of them. And yeah, I wonder, I don't know. It'll be interesting just what more like Hispanic people, especially people who are just like just all the cartel nonsense, and so much of it is just like south of the border that's fucking up life up north for everybody else. And I wonder what other Hispanic people who've witnessed it have a bit of history with it. I wonder what people will come forward with, because the kids stuff, that stuff like just was being heard in the Senate. And that's now common knowledge, where even a few years ago they were saying, oh, kids aren't being raped at the border. Oh, no, they're not raping toddlers. And now it's like common knowledge. And a lot of Latina Republicans, like Miss Anna Paulina Luna, were testifying and making like the Democrats like nod their heads, well, in shame, which is good, but also like, all right, because we're doing real stuff, and it's not just a token you're going to spin and it's going to land, and you're going to choose a direction off of whatever Latin, whatever. And so the kid issue was being handled finally just in the Senate this year. So yeah, I don't know. But okay, so I was waiting. I'm glad you stayed on for Vato, because I'm going to assume that you're Hispanic. And if you're not, that's fine too. But I'm just going to assume for understanding culture, and you could still understand parts of those cultures. And I don't understand a huge part of it, just my specific history with it. But this has been my prediction at large. So for Latin America. So I think, like, I'm glad you said that the Mexican military doesn't get the credit it deserves, because I am, just for the sake of this conversation right now, going to feel more confident that the Mexican military is going to be able to hopefully get permission to be able to handle things in the city states they operate, so things don't get just massive, chaotic, and crazy. So I hope that, because Texas is now deploying their military, and they've said straight up that we're going to push people back. So they're going to be actively pushing people back with weapons. So, and that's nice to hear that hopefully they'll be able to sort something out within Mexico for that. But what I wanted to say at large for Latin America was, it'll be interesting. And while I have you on here, I want to know your thoughts on the China-Russia incentive, because this is my understanding right now, is that previously what it's been in Latin America since like the turn of the century. So my great grandma immigrated from there, had the socialists come, massacre that, and whatever it was. I don't really know the whole story, but that was the beginning of the 1900s, like World War I era, where it was just the socialists doing their damn thing with everybody has a newspaper. Yes, the moment we've all been waiting for. So, and then everybody had a TV. So I wonder, so I see Latin America as mainly like socialist already, with just very little freedom for self-determination. And then I imagine their socialism only, like ours in America, the foreign ties only became more overpowering of even the people who domestically had been in power. So with China and Russia taking over parts of South America, so Argentina, and this is as far as I know from when I researched it a little bit and was keeping up on it and doing videos, is that Argentina decided to enter in a bank with China, and there were all kinds of articles on that. And then so they're wanting to break away from any like agricultural, maybe not any, but from anything that they would be dependent on agriculturally with Brazil or Chile, because they had been burned in the past by Chile defaulting on ag loans, agricultural loans. And then Brazil, just like a socialist cesspool. And sorry, I'll get the Central American ones mixed up because I'm just learning about those right now. But the more socialists of the Central American countries and then the islands. I just, and Mexico, I just, I don't know, except for that, I think because socialism is such an en masse enterprise, that I think that there's going to be like a lot of like rug, like from underneath people's feet. But then at the same time, there'll be like opportunities because we're having the semiconductors move over here. Joe Biden did that. Whatever agreement with Canada and Mexico. So yeah, I'm not at a place to like predict anything further with that. I am just curious. I think it would be really cool actually if Mexico split. That would be a cool thing to see. And then them even to enter into like a bank with China, just like literally just to like push direction and to like organize. And so for people who wanted to like operate like new, I guess, like factories and advance in tech, that there would be a place where it was like, for better, for worse, this is what's going on here. And then all like the cheap fucking meth and fentanyl and child whore kingdom part could at least be visually separated from those who want to advance, literally just so America could respond more seamlessly to things south of the border. Because all of these people, and this is what I get from my Mexican American history, and for the socialists that murdered my grandmother's family, the Ann Merida, that they like to just they'll immediately just go like slime, like try to hide behind something or infiltrate something. And so like the more things can be separated and the less places for the socialists to hide, the more like real opportunity can come about south of the border. And then also the people who've done the most heinous crimes, like you're saying, that the Sinaloa and the Jalisco cartel, and then anybody involved in the child sex crimes, so they can meet consequences without harming the innocent in that area who are ironically probably surpassing having been tortured or traumatized in whatever way. So, yeah. Also, it could be like no, I don't think it would be a gnarly conflict. I think the socialists thought they were going to get a lot more, like they always do, because you're being sold inflation when you're becoming a socialist. You're being sold the idea. Yes, I have fallen for it. 3-3 Vata. You're being sold the idea that we're all going to work together, and if we're gonna grow and prosper, and there will be so much like abundance, and then for those things not to come forward, because a lot of people with the socialists were just sold that, and I'm like, yeah, for sure, positive thinking, like it. A lot of that's just not going to come true. So I hope it doesn't have to be too gnarly. Again, though, because so many children, like it was something like kids have lived in these ecosystems of and been tortured in as well, and then drugged throughout. I imagine there'll be some like gnarly things. I don't know, and it's so, and I just don't know enough because like Iran's in the Panama Canal. That was the new thing, and I love that. I do because I love the Middle East coming in and checking the cartel and be like, hey, do you want to see some flames come out from the desert? Which is a part of the story of my whatever the curse put on me, or my great grandfather Charles Crownholm the First, the Swedish Mexican who enslaved or married my grandmother consensually, Miss Anne Merida, had put upon him, or it was somebody like him. No, sorry, the story was, and I'll end on this, 3-3 Vato. We'll end on this ghost story. It's an absolutely true story. So there was a map when the conquistadors came, and they were the banditos would come and like, haha, we have your silver and your gold, and you can't catch us. And so the banditos would bury gold all throughout Mexico and silver, and then some that would become quite prominent would be hunted. And so one of my ancestors, apparently, this is around my aunt would say 1500. I think that's just because she didn't want me to know it was sooner, like 1800, because I'll stay locked in something I'm trying to understand until I am satisfied in my understanding of it. So she said 1500, but I'm pretty sure it was 1800 because she also then said the invention of iodine. And I just did some research this summer, and iodine had been isolated at the beginning of 1800 because that's why the natives, and then my grandmother's was Mexican native, named the capital of Yucatan after her because they had these goiters that the iodine apparently had cured, and they were able to drink their water again and not get these goiters in their throat. And that was 1800. So we'll go for 1800. So they get this map, or no, well, fuck. We'll qualify because I have so much research to do for this part of my history and just the history in general. So 15 to 1800, one of my ancestors gets this map, and for where one of the banditos buried this treasure, and apparently, upon getting the map, the bandito had put a curse on the people who would then go try to get this gold. Well, the people who are going to execute him, he just put a curse on them and their grandchildren for 7 or 8 generations. And again, he would have likely been a part native or part Spanish Mexican. He wouldn't have just been Spanish. Yeah. And so I don't think like any of the numbers are the actual understanding of numbers for what the bandito would have said, whatever his language would have been. I doubt it was translated super well, especially because you're speaking in anger, you're cursing somebody. So so they allowed him to do that, and then the family held on to the map. And then when Charles Crownholm got it, he hired, so this was generations later, it might have been his dad or him. And so he got it and then would hire people. And this is like the iodine guy, whatever the fuck. I don't know. I'll circle back, 3-3 Mondo. I'll have to circle back. But they got it and hired people to go get the gold and silver. And when they would get closer to the destination on the map, they would fall very ill. And this story was told all throughout my childhood. Me and like my Mexican from marriage, not the same line. We would enact the conquistador and the native Mexican and play this story out a lot. And so the closer they got, the sicker they would get, and they would be riding the horses, and they would get so close that they would go until they were falling off and could no longer just sit on top of their horse because they'd be getting violently ill. And then they kept doing that, and apparently his sister Connie or Barbara, I'm pretty sure it was his sister, burnt the map because he started going crazy, more crazy than he had already been. And he was a terrible man, and he would do rape punishment on my grandmother to punish her. A lot of Swedish men did. Stockholm syndrome makes sense. It comes from Sweden because fucked up place. It doesn't get enough acknowledgement for how fucked up it truly is. Has parts of it have been. There's some wonderful parts. But yeah, and then apparently it was burned. Maybe somebody transcribed it. Maybe it wasn't fully burned. And then that's just sorry. So in his curse, flames from the desert, which is why I went into this. In his curse, the Bendito said that if you, before this date, and that's why I love that there's like an Aztec Mayan part. It's like, if you, before this date, try to get this treasure, you and all your family will die. Like, there will be flames from the desert. You'll be falling to your death as you try to approach it, but also there'll be flames rising from the desert. And they would report that, and that's why apparently he started going crazy, is because the curse would become more and more true. The things that the Bandito said he would experience trying to get close to it, like flames in the desert, which he did say he saw. Yeah, it'd be so cool to meet somebody who had another relative involved in my grandfather's brigade, because it'd be so fun to hear their, like, what oral story was kept from their end. I'll pray for that because that'd be super cool to hear. Yeah, I got sick when I went to Mexico. So I won't be looking for any treasure. I had already told myself I found it when I met my friend Dioselina Alvarado, who she's not like actually my friend, but she was at the time, as far as I knew. And she was the first like native Mexican person I'd met who I was like, oh, you're like indigenous to Oakland. Oh, and then she actually looked like my great grandma Ann Merida when my grandma showed me the pictures of her. So that's what I told myself in my heart. I said, "You're my Plato. You're my little silver." 3-3 Vato. I would love to hear your thoughts on the China-Russia war. I'll be appropriate. I'll call it the Russian war because we're not really calling it China-Russia yet, are we? And how that'll affect things in Mexico. And then I'd also like to hear if you would actually watch like some of the really short clips with Dan Crenshaw talking about needing to do a bit of warfare with Mexico against the cartels for the protection of both our peoples moving forward. Because he's been talking about that a lot, and he, for the first time, just mentioned like threat of a bomb. So, which is like, he's like chomping at the bit, and then Texas is then also sending National Guards members to the southern border. So just kind of, I just want your opinion on as that happens throughout the summer. If you're on here, always feel free to share it with me, critique me as you wish. And thank you for joining me. I guess another thing, right now I'm so talky, but another thing I do wonder is other Mexican Americans' opinions on how you would deal with old grievances for like from the 50s and 40s when the American government was really racist against Mexicans and all the agricultural, I guess, slavery, but worse than slavery because it's promising somebody like something and then maybe giving them like a cheaper, like just defaulting on bargains and whatever happened agriculturally in California in like the 50s, as far as the government at that time having actually committed crimes against Americans because they were Mexican Americans. So, and I wonder what a lot of these cartel people, especially the younger people involved, still think about, well, this happened decades ago, so this is how I'm going to act now. I wonder what your opinion is on that. And then how many people in the cartel do you think still think that way, where they're like, no, I'm avenging my grandma who was a grape picker in Sonoma County from 1954. Like, and I wonder how that actually looks, or if they don't care about those injustices at all. I don't know, like that much about either of those groups. I'm pretty sure I have a little Jalisco genetic makeup too, just because it popped up one time on my ancestry. It showed like Mexico, and then it went Yucatan, Jalisco, but then it just went back to Mexico. And so I like to try to connect with my ancestors in that way, especially because I don't have a family. So I wonder in learning about their history. So I don't know really, apart from the tequila capital, anything about Jalisco. But thank you for sharing that with me, and that the Mexican military doesn't get the credit it deserves. I hope it does. And then I hope it gets more of a voice, maybe. So people could hear like what's really going on and what like true motivations are. Thank you, 33 Vato, and everyone else for joining me.